Welcome, everyone. Let us begin by creating a sacred space here and now. Imagine your aura filling with white light from above, which then spreads outward to join all our auras in a beautiful circle of white light filling this space. Let us be respectful of one another and keep our remarks on the highest level possible. My name is Enjah. I've been studying tarot and Kabbalah, astrology, mental healing, and spiritual alchemy for over 45 years. As a student of the Western mysteries, I am sharing what I have learned. I identify as a fellow seeker rather than as a teacher. As we share our insights, we have an opportunity to learn together. My core beliefs are these. The universe is composed of mental energy. All humanity is one being. Everything in the universe is inside each of us. Because each of us reflects the one will of the universe, we share in that will. We all reincarnate repeatedly to learn and grow as spiritual beings. Once we get to a certain level of understanding, we are able to work for the good of humanity. And each incarnation is a further unfoldment of that work. This tarot tableau and deck are from Builders of the Adytum, BOTA. I studied the BOTA lessons for 15 years. And just briefly, adytum is a Latin word for the inner temple, the temple built without hands. This is a Christian form of Kabbalah. It comes originally from Europe, and it was brought to the United States by Paul Foster Case. You can go to bota.org for more information about becoming a member and receiving the lessons yourself. These talks highlight aspects of the symbolism of the tarot. Attending these talks will give you methods to use the tarot in your own spiritual work if you should desire. But no one else can do that work for you. If you are looking for a guru, a personal advisor, or instruction on fortune telling, please look elsewhere. The methods presented here are for our use in meditations and to aid in spiritual unfoldment only. Meditating on and working with the tarot on a daily basis will bring you much more than I can ever tell you, including insights that apply directly to you and your life. You can use whatever tarot deck you prefer as long as working with it leaves you feeling uplifted. The BOTA deck I am using is printed in black and white, and the student colors his or her own deck, which personalizes it quite a lot. If you are interested in the history of the tarot, here is a link you might like. You might also enjoy reading the history of Builders of the Adytum here. The first stage of spiritual unfoldment, which is shown on the far left column of the tableau above my head, is called bondage or mirth. In this stage, we are faced with a problem and come to see that we have created our own circumstances because of some error in our belief system. Once we change our beliefs, our circumstances must change to reflect the new concepts. The second stage is called awakening. And now we're going from left to right, so that's the next column, in which our subconscious mind receives the new concepts we are incorporating. The higher self brings us a flash of insight, in which we see briefly that the physical universe is composed of pure energy. In the third stage, revelation, the subconscious mind multiplies the seed ideas given to her by the self-conscious mind, creating inner order. As we repeatedly visualize what we want, over time they are manifested through meditating upon them. The fourth stage, organization, is all about balance. Our self-conscious mind now reviews the results of these new ideas about reality and begins to create outer order based upon them. We develop emotional equilibrium, also called equanimity in the Buddhist system, controlling our reactions to circumstances. This mitigates the karma associated with our former errors. We also begin to incorporate more and more light into the cells of our physical vehicle. In the fifth stage, called regeneration, we learn to listen to the inner teacher, the only true source of wisdom. This involves silencing the mental chatter. Now the light is so prevalent in the body that the body and mind are regenerated. Today, we will be discussing the sixth stage of spiritual unfoldment, realization. The three keys are Key 6, the lovers, Key 13, death, and Key 20, judgment. Key 6, the lovers. This key shows the higher self. This key shows the higher self overshadowing both self-consciousness and subconsciousness. The astrological association is the sign Gemini. The power of consciousness is discrimination or discernment. The key word is the inner sense of smell. In the body, it is the shoulders, arms, hands, lungs, and nervous system. On the tree of life, it is path 17, connecting Bina, the cosmic mother, and Tifereth, the sphere of beauty, the self of mankind. The Hebrew letter shown on the lower right-hand corner of each key is Zayin, meaning the sword. As you may know, Jesus said, "I come with a sword." He said, I don't have the exact words, but he said, "I come bringing a sword." And in this system, the sword is considered the instrument of discrimination. We cut away things that are not true or things that are unnecessary to our spiritual life. The bodily function is the sense of outer smell. The practical use of this key, so in other words, when you work with it and meditate upon it, it improves your inner and outer sense of smell and the ability to discern subtle differences. Meditating on this key will help with making decisions. The method of using this key is to say something like this to the subconscious mind. From now on, you will manifest my self-conscious suggestions only when they agree with the higher self. This frees us from manifesting our false ideas of how things should be. This key also shows self-consciousness and subconsciousness unclothed to symbolize their openness with one another. There are no secrets between them, as with a good pair of lovers. This is an image of the inner man and the inner woman, but it can also be used in relationships. And the way that you do this is you meditate on this and then you imagine your lover, husband, wife, partner as the other person. Whatever gender you are, you can picture yourself in that part of it and picture the other person on the other side, whether they are the same gender as the other side or not, because we're talking about the inner, and so it doesn't matter really. And you can also imagine a figure 8. Imagine yourself seated across from your partner, and you imagine a figure 8 in pink light circulating between the two. And you look at that person and you say, I see the higher self in you. This can really uplift a relationship and take it out of the mundane little quarrels that can happen between two people because nobody matches exactly what we think they should be or ourselves. We're all different. But at the higher level, we're all the same. Key 13, death. The astrological association is the sign Scorpio. The law of consciousness it represents is transformation. The key phrase is the acceptance of continual movement and change. In the body, it is associated with the reproductive system. On the tree of life, it is path 24, connecting Tifereth, the higher self, and Netzach, the desire nature. The Hebrew letter is Nun, meaning fish. The practical use of this key is that it helps us to accept the constant change in our bodies, including the death of the physical vehicle, as well as the changes we perceive outwardly. Key 20, judgment. The astrological association is the planet, or maybe not planet, Pluto. The condition or result is realization. The key phrase is awareness of eternal beingness. The alchemical association is the element fire. On the tree of life, this is path 31, connecting Hod, the intellect, and Malkuth, the physical vehicle. The Hebrew letter is Shin, meaning fang or tooth. The practical use is that this helps us gain at least a glimmer of the knowledge that we are eternal beings. The result is some level of realization. This key is very mysterious. You notice there are 2 archangels in this stage, and we haven't had an archangel since the first stage of spiritual unfoldment. So this is a pretty important step. The archangel is Gabriel, or Gabriel. The experience is the 4th dimension. Now, my understanding of dimensions is that the 4th dimension is called movement. But in this case, what it's actually talking about is the spiritual 4th dimension, the awareness of the eternal now. Self-consciousness, the man on the right, and subconsciousness, the woman, are rising out of coffins along with their child, the regenerated personality. So somewhere along the line, these guys had a baby. They were lovers. Then they're killed. You can see there's a man and a woman's head in key 13. And then they're back, but they're gray. And they're rising out of coffins along with their child. It's a very, very mysterious and complex set of symbolism. The 4th dimension in this system is beyond the 3-dimensional everyday world we know in our daily lives. It is the eternal now. As with all these keys, this one is loaded with so many symbols, it is beyond the scope of this talk to go into detail about them. Suffice it to say that once we are called up out of our mundane reality, we experience life very differently. We are permanently changed. Once we know we live eternally, the body does not live eternally. But the spirit, soul, however you term it, the essence that enlivens the body, which leaves at the time of physical death, is there forever. Please join in the discussion now in text or in voice.
Who is the angel in card 6?
Oh, that's Raphael. And these names in Hebrew, Raphael means God the healer, and Gabriel means the might of God. And as you know, Oriel means the light of God, the hidden light, the light in physical manifestation, which fools us and, lies to us about reality, tells us that this is all there is. They're all very, very beautiful creatures, or whatever you want to call them, the beings, entities. On the tree of life, the path of key 6 goes from Bina to Tiferet. So it comes from the mother to the son. So that would be, in Christian terms, it would be the Virgin Mary, but it comes from the mother who creates based on the energy given to her by the Father. And then it comes down to the higher self of humanity, which would be the Christos. And the man Jesus embodied the Christos at a higher level than anybody that we knew of ever before. Key 13 comes out of Tiferet and goes to the desire nature. So we go from the mother to the Son of man, the Son of God, to the desire nature, which is a personality aspect. And the personality has to die in order to be one with the Christos. And that is what the death is that we're talking about. It's sometimes called the ego death. And in alchemy, it's called the putrefaction, or the nigredo, the black stage, where everything dies away. The personality is just utterly disintegrated. And that's why we see it being reborn in key 20, because it has died. The personality died. The path of Sheen. Now, Sheen is called the holy letter in Judaism, is my understanding. And the path of Sheen goes from the intellect, the orange sphere, down to the physical body. So it's a very strange thing that we have this awareness of fourth dimensional reality, and yet it somehow involves the intellect. I think the intellect is transformed in this stage. But also after we die, we go up these paths backwards. We go from the physical body, which we're departing from, taking off as in an article of clothing. We go to key 21, and then we go to key 20. So in a sense, there is a judgment. This isn't the one referred to by many people that, everybody's going to be judged. It's more the judgment that is in the Egyptian tradition, the ma'at, that the heart is as light as a feather. And my understanding is that because the heart is made of spiritual energy like everything else, of course it's as light as a feather. It weighs exactly the same as anything. But it's also that the consciousness is light and airy and fulfilled by being called up out of three-dimensional reality. Well, Kadrin, in your talk the other day, you spoke about the shadow body and the spiral force, and what you talked about was a cleansing of the causal body. Now, in this system, I believe that would be related to the sphere called Yesod. And yes, it is what we would call in this system the astral body. It might also be called the etheric body. I'm not really sure. These terms are, it depends on how you're carving things up. And that is where the patterns are stored in this system. Those are the patterns of behavior, and the patterns of emotion, relationship with relatives, all kinds of psychic phenomena are contacted there. It's the astral plane. It's the level just inside or up or east of the physical body. It's the next finer vehicle. The tree of life represents everything. So I'm trying to figure out exactly where the causal body would be. But if it is where the patterns are stored, then it would relate to that what you call the dreaming body. It is where we go in dreams. We travel the astral plane in dreams. We can experience other realities, but it is mostly emotional patterns, and we change that by connecting to new patterns in this system. And also the higher self is there. The key 9, the higher self, it's got the same number as that Sephira. The tree of life has 7 levels: physical, emotional, the desire nature and the intellect, the higher self, which would be the heart center, and then above the heart center would be the throat, the base of the throat, and then above that would be the brow chakra, and then above that would be the crown chakra. So you can see there are 7 levels, but 3 of them have 2 Sephiroth associated with them that have to be balanced. What puzzled me about it, and maybe this will trigger some thoughts or questions, what puzzled me about it is, how do we get from programming our subconsciousness to dying? How does that lead into a death? I can understand how a death leads into a rising out of the body, of course. But I cannot get how, except of course in the old saying, sex and death are related.
The physical body starts to die the moment you're born.
Does the central vertical line through the tree of life, is that the 7 chakras?
In the body, that is, in the human being, the individual human being, the middle pillar, which you're talking about, would be the spine. The very, very bottom Sephira, Malkuth, or the kingdom, would be the base of the spine or the feet, depending on how you're looking at it. Then the Yesod, the sphere called foundation, would be the sacral plexus or the second chakra. I think that's called the Svadhisthana chakra, if I'm not mistaken. Then the third level would be 2 Sephiroth. So they are balanced. They have to be balanced in order to get past that chakra, or not past it, but to balance it and activate it and continue on. Then that would be the solar plexus, the chakra at that level. So there are 7, but there are actually 5 Sephiroth on the middle pillar. One is invisible, and that's called Da'ath, sometimes known as knowledge. And it's in between the yellow and the white. Does that answer your question, or does it only confuse things?
When you look at this tree of life, is it a representation of the personality of an individual, or is it a representation of sort of mankind, for want of a word? how all people are.
It is, well, I think I said before, and I think it's important to know that this can represent the universe, and it comes out of nothingness. There are, and this is going to be very brief, but I'll be talking about this on Thursday. According to Kabbalah, behind the tree of life are the three veils of the Absolute. The first veil, the deepest, is Ein, the no thing. It is something about which really nothing can be said. Then, in front of that, is the Ein Sof, or En Sof, and that is the limitless, that which has no limits. Then, out of that comes the Ein Sof hour, or En Sof hour, depending on Hebrew pronunciation. And that is the limitless light. Now, if you are psychic, you may experience this limitless light as darkness or blackness, which is brilliantly bright. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but it's kind of invisible light. Then that light condenses to a point, which is Kether, the beginning of the whirlings is what it's called. So once that point has been reached, and that's called the one. So out of zero comes one, out of nothingness comes one, then out of one comes two, and that is considered to be the Father, because in order to remain unity, the one thing cannot have any differences in it. It's a contradiction in terms. This is what I would call God, the oneness, the unity of all. Then it emanates the Father, wisdom. Okay, the top one is the crown, the point one, unity. Then the second one is the eternal masculine, or Father God. Now, Father God projects energy. It has been projected by the one, but it is, in a sense, a limited part of the one because it's doing something. Thank you, Radron. I appreciate you welcoming Camille. Welcome, Camille. So then the Father projects this energy, and it's taken up by the Mother, just as in manifest reality, the woman absorbs the energy of the man and then creates a child from it. All right, so we have Mother God. So we have Father, Mother, God at the level of the brow chakra. The crown chakra would be related to the point, the unity of all. And together they create the Son. Now in this tradition, the Son of Man, the Son of God, is all humanity. We're not all at that level, but we do have that potential. And in the tradition I grew up in Catholicism, it was called the imitation of Christ. And this is to become as Christ-like as we can in our daily lives. So anyway, that's a lot about the Tree of Life. The answer to Joe's question about the Tree of Life is that it is all people. We are all created and made in this way. We have these parts, so it applies to all of us and not to any particular individual alone.
I was going to ask about the placement of the cards on the Tree of Life. Does that change if some sort of divination is done for an individual, or are they considered fixed as part of it? The other question is this thing ever shown as a three-dimensional model? I'm trying to imagine what it would look like.
The placement on the tree of life all varies in different systems. This is BOTA's placement of these images, these keys. Now, if you do a divination, the placement in the spread changes how it is interpreted. You know, if it's a current circumstance, or if it's how you see it consciously, or if it's the past, or so on, of course it looks a little bit different. And as far as being three-dimensional, yes, it is three-dimensional, but it would be very difficult to build. I mean, I actually tried to make a tree of life in Second Life, and I think you could do that if you really know what you're doing, but I was not successful. But yeah, there's three dimensions, because as you can see, some of these paths are actually in front of other ones.
Tesseract comes to mind, but this is a lot more complex than that.
It is an attempt to make a two-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional reality. It's just basically impossible. And this is a simplification, of course. And these are the visible paths. There are also invisible paths on the Tree of Life. And as we go on with these stages, it's harder and harder to discuss them, because some of these experiences are well beyond words. So in the sixth stage, we say to our subconscious mind, from now on, you will manifest my self-conscious suggestions. So that is the first stage that we're talking about. In the first stage, we give suggestions to subconsciousness, and that creates our circumstances. God gives us what we ask for, even if it is something really unfortunate, until we learn that we're focusing this power. That's really the only power that a human being has, is the ability to pay attention and to focus this immaterial energy. That's represented by key 0, the Fool. Okay, so we say to subconsciousness, from now on, you will manifest or elaborate or multiply my self-conscious suggestions only when they agree with superconsciousness, or the higher self. Superconsciousness, key 0, the spirit. So the angel is mediating that, and the angel and the people, you can see they all have their hands outspread. And if you trace their hands, you can actually make a 6-pointed star from their hands. There are 2 triangles that you can form in this key, or you can make a figure 8. Now, the 6-pointed star represents the heart. It is the fusion of the masculine and feminine energies in this tradition. It's the Star of David, the Mogan David, which represents love between the masculine and the feminine. So we want our self-conscious mind and our subconscious mind to love one another openly, no lying, no secrets, openly. When we do this, we become more and more individuated, and that means that we can attract better circumstances and better people into our lives, actually. And there's still going to be some unpleasant people. There are bullies, there are people who have anger and who will take it out on us. But we'll be less and less vulnerable in the sense of reactive. We're more and more aware of energy, so we're more and more aware of both positive and negative energy. I think we are taught to put down the other gender. Many, many people will say, oh, men, or, oh, women. You know, we hear this. And it's an unhealthy perception. Both men and women are beautiful souls who are manifesting in the physical world. There are differences, obviously, and we incarnate in different forms in this tradition, sometimes masculine, sometimes feminine. But both are worthy. So we try to love the other gender, whatever it may be. So this works through the law of continual change or transformation. Nothing can stay in the same form forever. That means that we have to die. But also there's a death of the personality. We talked about this a little earlier in the talk, the ego death that's referred to in many spiritual traditions. The higher self, who in this case is the skeleton, but also it represents the bones, so that would refer to Saturn or Father Time, and he has the sickle, so that's definitely time. In time, everything dies, except for the spirit, which lives forever. And in the flow of the stream in the picture, in the image, it turns to the east and there's a rising sun. A lot of times we think this is a setting sun, the end of life. It isn't the end of life, but it can be the end of physical beingness. So we're going to something higher than the personality level. In the tree of life, the yellow sphere would be represented by the sun. And so we're going towards the Christos, moving away from the lower self to the higher self. And this becomes sort of impersonal because the higher self is not personal. It's beyond that. And we start looking at ourselves with amusement, looking at our personalities with some kind of amusement and love, the way we would love a pet. We still have our quirks. We still have our weaknesses and strengths. We can work on them from a higher level once we reach living from the heart chakra. And when we do that, the personality, the little child who's coming out of the coffin of three-dimensional reality, is regenerated, is reborn. So we live in eternity from then on. It doesn't matter how long or how short our physical lifespan is. Once we live in eternity, it doesn't matter. There's a lot in this. There's Gabriel's horn, has seven tones issuing from it, which could be construed as the tones of the chakras. They all have, in this system, colors and sounds. There are 12 light beams coming out of the cloud, the 12 areas of the body. There's a flag with an equal-armed cross, and the center implies the fifth, the quintessence. It's just packed. All these images are packed